Revelation 2817. From the 19th of July 1943. Men's Incarnation of Christ. There is no more formidable problem than the incarnation of Christ. This problem cannot be solved in spite of the best will and closeness to God as long as the human being remains on earth. It is an overwhelming grace that God provides people with information in the most comprehensible way in order to make the significance of the act of salvation clear to them, so that they will not pass by the greatest work of grace without being touched. Yet all these explanations are not enough to make God's incarnation in Jesus comprehensible, for this was an act of divine love for which people still have no standard, because they don't know the kingdom of light and thus have no idea in which low level of development the eternal deity embodied himself and how this embodiment is therefore to be assessed. Furthermore, Christ's incarnation is an act of grace which can no longer be surpassed by God's greatest love. It is proof of the deepest sympathy and greatest willingness to help, of which a being is capable, to make the spiritual beings in greatest need happy with his presence, to step into the darkest shadow as the brightest light and to dwell in the same embodiment among people who have become loveless as purest love. This is incomprehensible to people because they, being only insufficiently capable of love themselves, cannot even begin to measure God's love. It is incomprehensible to them because they also do not know what it means for love to have to tolerate unkindness next to it. Because love is heavenly and divine, whereas unkindness is from the depths and the divine thus tolerates the satanic next to it. Purity and light were next to sin and darkness, power and strength next to powerlessness and weakness of will, love and goodness next to the hatred of men, to whom God and Jesus descended. Not only were people weak according to their degree of development, but their life far from God entailed this weakness, and this meant an overwhelming spiritual darkness, which was the reason why God embodied himself amongst people, why he clothed himself with an earthly cover in order to exemplify to people the life they should lead in order to come close to him. He himself became a human being and descended from the height to the abyss. He enveloped his abundance of light with a form which itself still hid mature spiritual substance, and the immature external form still prevented the divine love, which sheltered within it, from working spiritually, and the body first had to completely merge into love through the will of Jesus human being before divine love could take effect in it. And the man Jesus had to pass this test of will in order to be able to work and preach in godlike will. Only now was the eternal deity able to express itself through him, who fulfilled all conditions so that he could reveal himself in him, so that he could speak through him to people who otherwise could no longer hear the divine voice because they had completely distanced themselves from God. This is why God came to earth, to people, because his word was no longer received by them and he wanted to make them happy again with his word. And therefore he took on a human form in order to feel like a human being, in order to work like a human being and thus also to attain spiritual maturity, so that God's love took abode in him and enabled him to perform extraordinary deeds. He wanted to show people the path of ascent which every human being has to take in order to become like him already on earth. Amen.